Our friends. We've got a lot of people registered today. We've got about, what was the last number we had, Saskia? Oh,
We have about 140 people registered.
yeah, so that's very exciting. Great opportunity for us. And then we'll send that out by email to everybody after the session. So thanks for jumping in. We'll wait a few moments while we let the joiners come in. We're a little bit early, but it's because we're excited. So I'm wondering how many of you were able to read the book? I got it. I love it. I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm mostly because I like to sit with things. So I look forward to having a little bit of time next week when I'm on vacation to review a few parts. It's just so helpful to read something hopeful right now. If you don't have the book already, you can order it at your local bookstore. And that comes in quite quickly. It was released at the beginning of May. And I believe Maude's been doing a number of speaking events, some of them in person at bookstores and some of them online.
Boy, I should hire you, my dear. Thank you. It's, when you want to hit a bestseller list, it has to be, they only look at the bookstores and the sales through bookstores. So we always encourage people. My former organization, I'm retired, bought a whole bunch. And I've been signing madly away hundreds of them, but they don't count for what constitutes a bestseller. So I'll always say, yeah, go to your local bookstore. But thank you for your nice words.
You're welcome. Well, we've got to support the small bookstores if they're going to keep going. And it comes in nice and quick. And it's what I like about it too is when I order it at my local bookstore, then the bookseller sees it comes in and decides to potentially order a couple more. Because once they've got it in hand, they're like, oh, this would totally work well. So I'll invite folks to put themselves on mute. There we go. Okay, as people come in, I'm just going to run through my little rigmarole again. Thanks for being here. We're really glad you're here. Welcome. It's going to be a really interesting hour. Before we get started, let's take a moment for logistics, make sure everybody's set up. If you can, please turn on your camera so we can connect face to face, at least at the beginning, but no pressure if you're not comfortable, and feel free to turn off the camera when we get into the heart of the session. I often have my camera off because it helps me listen a bit better. If you can make sure your microphone is muted when you're not speaking, that will help reduce background noise. If you have any questions or comments during this session, use the chat box, write in the chat box or raise your virtual hand. And we will have time for discussion and a Q&A later, so jot down anything you'd like to share. The meeting will be recorded and will be shared on the ORCIE website as well as emailed to everybody who signed up. And then there's a reminder too that the book's also available through the Ottawa Public Library and likely other libraries as well. I was giving my little promo on why you should order it from your local bookstore. It helps bump the numbers up. It's a great gift if somebody's birthday is coming up. And it's, for me, what I'm looking forward to is actually delving deeper into it on my vacation when I actually have time to really get into it and return to different things and make notes. So we're still letting people in. We're just going to keep doing that. And then once we've got a critical mass, we'll move forward. We've got about 140 people signed up today, which is really exciting. It was spread far and wide. And we look forward to being with you all today. So it's great. I see most of you put yourselves on mute. Thank you for doing that. If you haven't done it already, once we get started, we can mute you ourselves because we have the master powers as the hosts. So still letting a few people in. Excellent, excellent. Great, great. Okay, so maybe we'll get started. I'll introduce myself in case you don't know me already. My name is Genevieve Gallant, and I serve as the Executive Director of ORCIE, the Office of Religious Congregations for Integral Ecology. ORCIE is an organization that groups over 24 religious congregations gathered to enhance capacity and to collaboratively increase our impact on policy change towards social and ecological justice. We focus on climate change, not only because it's the most defining issue of our time, because it connects so well to everything else. Such key issues as biodiversity loss, Indigenous rights, food insecurity, migration, health, and water, and the new commercialization of the commons. Thank you for being with us today. And to celebrate and explore Maude Barlow's new book, Earth for Sale, The Fight to Stop the Last Plunder of the Planet. A really compelling call to protect the global commons and safeguard our future. Still got all of a sudden, a big rush of people jumping in. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass it over to Tara.
Good afternoon. So I was asked to do the land acknowledgement and prayer. Can everyone hear me well? Yeah, good. So I'm joining you from near the shores of the Kitchissippi, the Great River, the traditional and unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, also known as Ottawa or the National Capital Region. I want to thank everyone who's present on this online platform and take a moment to acknowledge the land that we each are joining from. So you're welcome to put the territories, the traditional territories that you're joining from, and the treaties in the chat at this point. If you're not aware of where you're joining from, this is a great resource, nativeland.ca. You can look up the treaties and the traditional peoples of those territories. So anyone wants to put in their territories. So from coast to coast to coast, these are the unceded and ancestral territories of the Inuit, First Nations, and Métis people. And I just want to take the opportunity to allow us some time to reaffirm our commitment to improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of the local Indigenous cultures and peoples in our area. So just ask you to join me in a moment of quiet reflection on both the historical and the current forms of colonial harm, and consider how each we can, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of cultural humility, reconciliation, and collaboration. So we'll just take a moment now for that. And the prayer I'd like to share with you today is adapted from one written from John Eric Jasmine, who's the director of Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation for the Oblates globally. And I work with the Oblates here in Ottawa and across the country. And I just invite you to contemplate the image and the words. Almighty and everlasting God, source of justice and truth, we come before you, lifting up the brokenness and suffering in our world. We pray for the oppressed, the marginalized, the vulnerable, and the earth itself. Lord, graciously hear us. Creator of our common home, you fill the earth and the sea and the sky with life. Forgive us our neglect of your creation and our complicity in the systems that destroy it. Lord, have mercy. O compassionate one, our brothers and sisters suffer around the world. We share in their pain. As refugees search for home in foreign lands, guide them. As world leaders, dialogue, give them wisdom. As strangers knock on our doors, help us to welcome them. Lord, give us peace. O Lord, help us to amend our lives and to live well and gently on the earth, to lift our voice for lasting change, for justice for the earth and all her peoples. We ask this through the glory of your Son, the living Word. Amen.
Thank you, Tara. Over to Sue.
Okay, thank you, Tara, and thank you, Jen. I know many of us have heard Maude speak many times before about issues related to water and more widely the commons, and it is always a treat. Maude is a Canadian author and activist and internationally recognized advocate for water justice. She's also a best-selling author of 21 books. She co-founded the Council of Canadians and chaired its board for over 3 decades. She served as senior water advisor to the president of the UN General Assembly and co-founded the Blue Planet Project, which works globally to advance the human right to water. So given all that, it is not surprising that Maude is the recipient of 17 honorary doctorates, as well as numerous other environmental justice awards. So Maude, with great pleasure, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much to all my friends at ORCIE, to Genevieve, to Joe, to Sue. I feel like I'm with old friends, and I want to just thank you, Tara, for that beautiful prayer and your acknowledgement. I also am with the unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We live in the same area. But it put me in mind when you talked about asking for forgiveness for what we do sometimes to the earth. And it puts me in mind of David Suzuki's wonderful statement, what he says, if we stop hurting nature, it will be more forgiving than we deserve, which I think is quite wonderful. So I'm just going to babble at you for a little while, and then I think hopefully we're going to have a chance to chat. So this book, and some people say, why didn't you write this book first and then the book on hope after? Because this is a tough book. And I even end by saying it was a tough book to read, I bet, because it was a tough book to write. But I feel the story has to be told because it's really about the newest iteration of a very old issue that we all know about. And that's the destruction of our planet, our rivers, our soil, our forests, our air, by those who are seeking to profit from its exploitation. It's called many things, conservation finance, green economy, green growth, and so on. I call it the financialization of nature because I think that's the most accurate description. Well, what is the financialization of nature? Well, it's the same as financialization of everything else in our society. Financialization of the economy is where generating wealth through financial speculation, debt, and risk takes precedence over producing tangible goods and services. The financialization of housing is where residential real estate is transformed from being a place to live into a tradable financial asset and prioritizes maximizing investor profits over housing affordability. The financialization of food is a very big one and a very controversial one, where food and agriculture are treated as financial assets. Again, this word asset comes in. And investment opportunities rather than basic human needs or means of subsistence. The financialization of food shifts control of the food system from farmers and local communities to financial markets, banks, and corporate investors. And a good example of that is the wheat board. We fought the sale of the wheat board many years ago when Harper was in power. It was privatized in 2015 and now majority owned by a Saudi investment conglomerate. So there is just a perfect example of something that was about food and security for farmers and generally people. So the financialization of nature is the same. It's a process whereby nature, ecosystems, and their so-called services to humans. And right there, I think we should stop and say, why do we see nature as providing services? But you see that all over the language now at the UN and everywhere. So it's the process of taking nature and converting it into tradable financial assets, just like with food, just like with housing. Now, this isn't new. We've had carbon trading, as you know, for about 2 decades. And that's where companies and industry can continue to pollute, and they can even continue to grow and pollute as long as they offset, and you're going to hear this word a lot, they offset their environmental damage by investing in a project somewhere else. They get a credit, and this is actually accredited by the United Nations, very formal. They get a credit for every metric ton of greenhouse gas they claim to have prevented somewhere else. So one example, this is very, very common. A big company that's polluting will invest in a monoculture eucalyptus forest in somewhere in the global south, where they've taken down the native forest, or they've kicked the people off, indigenous people and others off the land. So you buy the trees for $1 a tree, $3 a tree. You own that. You're getting a credit, okay, for doing this, because now there's some trees, maybe not as good as the trees you replace, but trees, but they mature in 7 or 8 years, and you can turn around and sell them. So the added bonus, not only can you continue to pollute, you get credits for doing something that's going to make money for you in a few years. It has been deeply criticized. I go into the criticism, excuse me, in quite a lot of detail in the book. It's as a false solution. In last year, 60 renowned scientists from around the world said not only is carbon trading not working, but it's actually hindering the climate fight. But it's still growing, because in a market economy, that's all they can see. There isn't, as we move away from regulation, finding a market response is the only avenue that seems to be open. But in the last few years, the financialization of nature has exploded as the issue of biodiversity protection has come to the fore. I believe, and I make the case in the book, that we're entering a whole new phase in the corporate control of nature and all the policies that determine its future. Where up until now, government said, okay, we do give, a lot of contracts and so on to corporations, but we control it. But I see a different situation now. In a bold, proud, and official manner, governments are openly handing over, contracting out their responsibility to protect their natural resources. They're giving them to transnational corporations, market experts, asset managers who own a huge number and amount of money that they invest for others. They are now investing for others more than banks are in the world. I mean, they have really grown exponentially, and they've become major players in this. And this is all in the name of saving nature. So this is a direct outcome of the international gatherings. We know that they've been meeting on climate for years now, every year, but now they've also meeting regularly on biodiversity, the Convention on Biodiversity, on plastics, on water. Finally, they started on water, on forests and deforestation and so on. And leadership at the highest levels have agreed that fighting climate change, climate chaos, means protecting and restoring biodiversity. No argument with that, okay? 122 countries, including our own, have taken what's called the 30 by 30 pledge, and that is to protect and restore the biodiversity of their land, inland waters, and coastal areas by 2030. This is a very solemn pledge that has been taken. But we're a long way off globally from that. Canada's in a little better situation. We're close to half meeting that goal, but that's because we have so much wilderness and many other countries do not. So the question is, where are we going? And you get this at the highest levels of the World Bank, the UN, the big Nature Conservancy, World Wildlife Federation, those kind of conservancy institutions, really, that have all these corporations on their boards. They're all saying, well, where are we going to get the money to fulfill our 30 by 30 pledge? Well, you're going to get that from the trillions that are circulating in global financial markets because of the financialization of the economy. How can this money be harnessed to protect nature? Only if there's a way to make profit. And so what they are doing is put a price on nature to prove it as value. I call it measuring creation. And then you bring these assets that you have now put dollar figure on, you bring that into the market to compete where financial managers and risk experts, not governments, not communities, will determine its worth and future. So now, as well as we have as carbon trading, we have biodiversity offsets, plastics credits, green bonds, water futures trading, and the latest ocean blue bonds. So believe me, they are dividing up the ocean, and they're talking about its monoculture food, its aquaculture, its ecosystem, ecotourism. It is not for protecting the oceans. It is about how to make money from the crisis of the ocean. Now, people say to me, how do they make a profit from nature? Well, I count 4 ways. The first is the trillions of public funds that have already been pledged and earmarked by governments, the World Bank and the UN to meet this 30 by 30 pledge. There's a lot of money out there. The second is the good intention of investors, good people. And it was good people in many ways, environmentalists and scientists, who recommended measuring creation in the first place, because they said in a market economy, in a capitalist system, if you don't put a price on something, we don't value it. So there are huge investments being made by pension funds, which you know are huge, university endowments, nonprofit organizations, wealthy people, and billions of well-meaning individuals investing in so-called sustainable stocks and bonds. And it makes them feel they're doing something. You know, you're getting on that plane. Do you want to give a little extra money for this eucalyptus forest in Botswana or whatever? The third way that they make money, and this is really important, is back to this offsets. Biodiversity offsets work exactly the same way that carbon offsets do. They place a value on an animal, a plant, or a habitat that allows a company to continue to harm an ecosystem as long as it offsets the damage somewhere else. Perfect example is something called water pollution trading. They've had this in the Chesapeake Bay in the United States for a number of years. So a factory farm, Chesapeake Bay is ringed by different states, and they have different regulations. So a big factory farm is dumping its pollutants into Chesapeake Bay, but that state has quite high standards. So they buy credits from a factory farm in another state where the standards are lower. It's absolutely a scam. Food and Water Watch calls it manure trading, which is the best description I can think of. So, excuse me, we're now in the process of creating a new global financial market for permits to destroy nature. We haven't got there as far as carbon trading in terms of it being official, but Macron in France and the government in England and others have already talked about an international biodiversity credit market where investors can buy credits by saving wildlife and habitat. Habitat banking is a new thing you're going to hear more about. It's a new market-based system where a farmer or an organization can sell credits for protecting or restoring habitat. In Australia, you can buy a koala credit for $450 and an emu herd credit for $4,000. That means you can continue to destroy the habitat that you're destroying as long as you saved an emu somewhere or claim to have done it. Believe me, there is no follow-up. There is no accountability. I list scam after scam in the book. The International Monetary Fund says an elephant is worth 1.75 million US dollars, and a whale is worth 2 million. You know, as somebody said back when this was all starting, it's like measuring, excuse me, old cold. It's like measuring the umbilical cord on your mother, right? So, and that's the third. So the fourth way they make money is what I call cheap nature. The financialization of nature has created a form of new green colonization, a new scramble for land and water in the name of sustainable growth, and cashing in on cheap nature. Instead of saying, yeah, we're coming in and we're mining and to hell with you, they're saying, oh, no, we're in here to mine for sustainable rare earth minerals, and therefore we're going to get credits for it. And, you know, we're a green company. Much of it is under the guise of conservation finance. And if you talk to organizations in the Global South, Via Campesina, Friends of the Earth International, and so on, the People's Forest Program, they are adamantly opposed to conservation finance, because with the backing of the big conservation organizations, they expropriate small farms, indigenous people, and rural communities from their land in order to prioritize carbon sinks, conservation, ecotourism, renewable energy, all for saleable credits, or to be able to claim that that's what they are, and therefore you will invest in them because you feel good about it, because it's green or blue or whatever. You can even get credits now for investing in the horribly destructive lithium operations in the lithium triangle. Excuse me, I'll take a sip of water and this will be gone. In the lithium triangle in South America, where they are displacing many, many, many thousands of people, probably millions. They are displacing the water and destroying the water table. But you can get a credit for investing there because lithium is used to make batteries for electric cars. Canada has just announced giving tax breaks for investing in lithium exploration here in Canada's north. So, I mean, we are following suit. I'll get back to Canada in a minute. So I get asked, don't we need everybody in? The crisis is so great. Don't we need everyone in on the solution? Shouldn't asset managers and banks and corporations all get in on the green bandwagon? And my answer is, of course. Start by cleaning up your own act and help us build the regulatory system that we actually truly need. But these corporations and these asset managers and these professional investors should not be determining environmental policy or who has access to the planet's natural heritage. They have no business making these decisions. This is, in my opinion, a crucial issue of democracy, as we lost in so many ways care and control over the economy, so that we have these people who are above the law in so many ways because they are so wealthy, because we have not controlled the power of wealth, the power of money. We are at a situation now where this is truly an issue of who is going to make decisions around the fate of the planet upon which we all depend to live. There are those in the private sector who want to do the right thing, but they're at a disadvantage if the rules allow corporations that don't want to do the right things can make a profit because they're externalizing their environmental pollution or they're paying child labor or whatever. A company that doesn't want to do that is at a disadvantage. Martin Luther King said, legislation may not change the heart, but it will restrain the heartless, which I think is absolutely fabulous. Legislation may not change the heart, but it will restrain the heartless. We need good legislation. There are several strong arguments that the financialization of nature is not only dangerous, but it's a false solution taking us down a false path. Without regulation and oversight, private companies are free to opt out or completely fudge their promises, which I'm telling you they do, and I show it in the book. Look at what happened when the big banks in the United States and Canada pledged this net zero pledge when Biden was in office, and then Trump came in and they all dropped it, didn't even pretend. One of them even said, we know climate change is here and we can't stop it, so what's the point of pretending? I actually have that quote in the book. So without regulation, it's the worst get to go first. As well, by waiting for the financialization of nature to work, we're putting off what we need to be doing if we're really going to, we and the planet are going to survive. We've lost decades to the false solution of the market. The proof is in the pudding. I don't need to give the numbers here. Every environmental indicator, from warming, look what's happening in Europe right now, to the new reports on water, where we are now in a deficit. We are demand. They warned us 5 years ago that we would be in an overdraw situation, and here we are. The UN is saying clearly, we are, the demand for water is growing faster than supply. I mean, we can go through every indicator is, and I know I'm speaking to people who know that. So we've been putting off what we need to do because we've been hoping that this false solution would work. And finally, I want to make the point that green finance is a major driver of the growing inequality and injustice that now plague our world. You know that Elon Musk is the first trillionaire to walk among us. When was this? 6 weeks, 2 months ago, he became the first trillionaire. Do you know what he's worth now? He's worth 1.3 trillion. And I think it's a house of cards. I think it's going to come down. The vast majority of what shows as good stock markets numbers now in the United States are all due to AI, investment in AI. When that comes tumbling down, it's going to reveal that the real economy and this supercharged economy are on two different planes and one only serves the elite, the other doesn't serve the rest of us at all. So I really think we need to put this in context. It's not just about nature. It's about equality, it's about injustice, and it's about democracy. So Canada. So he wasn't all that much on Canada when I was writing the book, the sum. And we had started the Measuring Creation. That has been going on for several years. But about 2 months ago now, the Carney government unveiled its Canada Nature Strategy. And it is totally about the financialization of Canada's nature. It is very clear. First of all, we have to remember that Mark Carney served as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Change and Finance. That was his title. So he was at the UN, he was a huge booster of the green economy. So it's no surprise that his nature strategy is a blueprint for this. Nature is called natural capital. And one of the goals is valuing and mobilizing capital for nature. That's right in the press release. The government is seeking to attract at least $115 billion in private capital annually to meet our net zero climate by 2050. And they're going to ask, again, this is all just in the announcement. We don't have a lot of details. We're going to ask, the government will ask which measures will be considered to offset the environmental impact of an upcoming project. In other words, you're going to be opening up a new mine or taking down a forest or opening up a whole industrial area. How can you get an okay from the government, with the environmental rules and so on, such as they might still be? You have to promise to offset. So what are you going to do if you're destroying that wetland? What will you do instead? Maybe give money to a shelter or something for animals. I mean, these are the kinds of things that that we will determine. And I tell you, they will not make up for what gets destroyed with nature. And as we know, they're deregulating environmental rules as we speak at the federal and provincial levels, certainly in Ontario, Alberta, but even the NDP governments are backing away from strict deregulation. So not surprisingly, the Department of Finance is playing a major role in the Canada Nature Strategy. They're going to create a Canadian guidebook to certify green investments in Canada, and it's set up a committee to oversee the process, and it's full of investment experts, including a director with RBC. The sole Indigenous person on it is an investor type. So it is really coming from the finance investor, bringing in the market angle and not environmental concerns. And there's a new Ottawa-based nature investment hub for investors that, and I quote, that champions a thriving, high integrity nature finance market in Canada. So it has arrived here and we need to be aware of it. So in conclusion, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I have lots of solutions, of course, in the book. I never present a problem without the solutions. And they include strong local, national, international regulations to protect nature, to protect the climate. We need to reject the financialization of nature as a false solution and promote instead the rights of nature, which is one of the most exciting movements anywhere in the world. Gutierrez, the Secretary General at the UN, says this is one of the fastest growing legal developments in the world. There are over 500 rights of nature, rights of rivers, rights of trees around the world in 44 countries right now, but it's growing exponentially as communities are saying, we can't wait, and you often led by Indigenous communities. We can't wait for you to come down and save us from our government. Either the legislation isn't adequate or you're just not enforcing it. So we're going to bring it from the bottom up. We've got the Magpie River in Quebec, northern Quebec, which is the first, and one just in a small town in Quebec as well, the first town to declare their trees to have legal personhood. What I love about the 9 rights of the Magpie River, to flow, to regenerate, and so on. The last one is the right to sue, which I think is quite wonderful. We have to confront inequality among and inside nations. We have to heed the voices of displaced Indigenous and other frontline victims. They are very clear. If you look at the Indigenous rights groups in the Global South, they are of one voice condemning the financialization of nature. We need to work with them. But to be very honest with you, my big immediate goal is to start a dialogue and debate here in Canada and anywhere else. There was very little reaction in this country to the Canada Nature Strategy from nature groups, from the climate movement. It was just like deafening. And I thought, why is there no reaction? Why are people not seeing that this is a contracting out of government responsibility for, protecting our nature or our natural heritage over to the private sector? I just don't think we've talked about it. I don't think it's here as an issue yet. And I fear we're going to collectively sleepwalk into what I call the last plunder of the planet. So I'm just going to end with 2 quotes, which both I think are quite wonderful. The first is from George Monbiot. He's with The Guardian. Many of you will know him. He calls the financialization of nature a magic powder to allow governments to avoid the hard choices, laws, and policies they should be making by replacing political decisions with economic calculations. Gorgeous language. He's a wonderful writer. And I will quote him now. He says, the natural capital agenda is the definitive expression of our disengagement from the living world. First, we lose our wildlife and natural wonders. Then we lose our connections with what remains of life on Earth. Then we lose the words that described what we once knew. Then we call it capital and give it a price. This approach is morally wrong, intellectually vacuous, emotionally alienating, and self-defeating. Pretty clear, pretty clear. And finally, a lovely, lovely quote from a woman named Adrienne Buller. She's an environmental economist in England. She wrote a book called The Value of a Whale. And she says this: rather than accept the emerging capitalist hellscape of government incentives for private profiteering from nature-based solutions, we need to articulate an alternative vision of why nature matters. We should demand that the protection and restoration of ecosystems and biodiversity prioritizes environmental and collective social well-being over financial returns, both domestically and internationally. Instead of nature-based offsets and land grabs, we need reparations for our outstanding outsourcing of environmental destruction. In place of private enclosure, we need an expansion and protection of shared spaces, and to reclaim land for the commons, and not just see nature. This is me now for a second, not just see nature as somewhere in a park, but that is everywhere around us and all part of us. And back to her, she says, and we need an economy in which everyone has both enough time for and proximity to nature, allowing us all to reconnect to it as a source of well-being and wonder. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Maude. And those last quotes were really set us up for this next section, more of a discussion and a Q&A. Let me say, when I had the privilege to be at COP30 in Belém in Brazil, the Brazilian social movements organized a people's forum, and one of the major events was the funeral of capitalism. And it was a stunning social movement with puppets, music, a raucous party. It's the most exciting funeral I've ever been to. But if we can take that energy and have it to empower us to take action, then we're happy to get to it. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Joe Gunn, who's the co-chair of ORCIE, and he's going to lead us in a discussion and questions and answers. So please, as Joe's already mentioned, raise your hand, make a comment, chime in. We've got a huge group here today, which is really exciting. So yeah, write it in the chat or raise your hand. Over to Joe.
Well, thanks, Jen. And thank you, Maude. We could listen to you for a long, long time, all day, actually. And but let's get started with some questions. I see a hand from Darlene O'Leary in Antigonish.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Maude, and God bless you. Your work is so important, and we're also grateful that you've put so much time and research and effort and tears, I'm sure, into into sharing all of this with us. It's heavy and hard, but it's the reality we need to be aware of. So thank you. So I'm in Antigonish, Nalagachguniachk, which is the home of the Antigonish movement. And as you're speaking, I kind of, I'm thinking about your question about why people didn't react to the new Canadian nature strategy. And I think part of it is that this financialization and the language around it is so complicated and very intentionally made obscure for ordinary people. And it's so hard for anyone to really engage in it. They don't understand it. I don't understand it. And, I'm thinking back of the Antigonish movement and the effort then to really have people become, more democratically engaged in their own finances and their own economies, and so shape it and have the ability to control it. And I wonder what your advice would be for people to really be able to understand more about how these systems work and how to effectively address them.
Well, thank you very, very much, Darlene. That's why I wrote the book. The thing that I used to be most proud of at the Council of Canadians is that we would be able to take a complicated situation, a complicated trade agreement, or a scientific report, something from the IMF, and we would break it down. And I used to think, if I can understand it, I ought to get it in my head. If I can understand it and then tell it almost like a story. It's almost a story that you have to tell, which is why I start off with what is financialization. It's not just nature we're talking about here, it's everything in our world, which is why we have such deep divisions. So that I'm hoping that those of us you guys on this line who and anyone who belongs to any of the groups, nature conservation groups in Canada or anywhere, starts to raise this, because I find even like the National Observer. I've been a regular contributor to the National Observer, but they've been writing positively about ecosystem services because it sounds good on the Suzuki Foundation website. I don't know if it's gone because I kind of told them to take it down, but they were all about last year nature-based solutions, and because it sounds so good. And of course we want nature-based solution, but if the nature-based solution is all about markets making the determination and wrapping themselves in green and blue and, you know, sustainable. And now, as I say, oceans are the next frontier. And I just saw something on the oceans that Canada's involved in, and it's all about that. We need to be articulate. And you know what, Darlene, we made ourselves trade articulate. And Joe will remember this. Back in the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement days, people think NAFTA was the first. No, there was an agreement before that with Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney. Irish eyes are smiling. And I remember sitting reading the annex at the back of the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement that listed all of the goods and services that were going to be now subject to the rules of trade, which is basically take it away from government and give it to the market. And there was water in all its forms, including ice and snow. And I can remember thinking, what? 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 I don't even understand. I was just a complete blank. What did it mean? And then I thought, oh yeah, we've been fighting to stop these two massive commercial export projects. One was the Nawapa from the west, from the northern Alberta and BC through the Rockies, and one was from Quebec, the Grand Canal. And we stopped them. But I can remember thinking, I know what it's about. It's about commercializing water. It's about making water a tradable good. And that set me on the journey for the rest of my life from that day on became about water. But so I think, and we had to teach ourselves what this language meant because they really wrap it in beautiful stuff and, you know, pledges here and there, and it's all for the good of the people. And so we need a kind of translation or something from market-based solutions and ecosystem services. Nature doesn't exist to serve us. Let's just start there. We need this discussion, and it is my absolute hope that this book can help kickstart that discussion. And I think the best place is within organizations that already care about the environment and human rights.
Thank you.
Maude, it could be quite a long conversation, I know, but maybe just to get us started, is, you know, many of especially people belong to congregations of religious life have investment strategies and so on. And I'm sure there's a long conversation about what could be done. One of the questions in the chat is, are there any good places to invest money? There, obviously, you're alerting us to several things to be wary of, but many comments in that very, very large area?
Well, always in public sector, you know, we need, and there's a place for the private, and thank you for this, Joe. There's a place for the private sector. I want to be very clear. First of all, I'm making a distinction between these transnational corporations and your local ma and pa store. You know, they're wonderful community businesses that are doing wonderful work on the environment and caring for the local community. So I want to make that distinction. But even big business, there's a place helping us find the right technology to, you know, to clean what we've destroyed. Although I do make the point in the book that, you know, if we didn't destroy water so much, there wouldn't be a multi-trillion-dollar desalination industry coming at us. I have this image of the planet with all these huge desalination plants ringing the coasts because we've destroyed our water. Anyway, but so it's more, what is that proper role? Of course, we need just keeping the water subject alive or on topic. We need companies to lay the groundwork and do the infrastructure. No one's saying there isn't a place, but it is, we need to be wary of anything that leads to the privatization of what is either a public service like water or healthcare. I mean, we could get off on, or education in any of these. And I fought with the Ontario Teachers Fund years ago because they were putting, this is public teachers putting money into private water services in Chile and England and other places. Like, that is a contradiction. So promoting public services is it's also probably the best investment financially, or at least probably the most stable. I don't know. I'm not in the stock market. But so I'm probably not that. But I do think we need a literacy around not falling for language that really is taking us into a dangerous place.
Big area for sure. Brian in Calgary has a question.
Yes. Hi, Maude. Thank you very much for the book and the presentation, and for your initiative in starting the Council of Canadians, in which I am a foot soldier. And hopefully the council can get behind your ideas. It seems to me that when we talk about financialization, we're looking at a fossil fuel industry which is stealing our natural resources, stealing without a single dollar invested, doing it, as you say, on offsets and government handouts. And we have governments who are co-opted by this and who are complicit. I look at the Alberta Heritage Fund, which was started by Peter Lougheed back in the 1970s and ruined by subsequent premiers. I think of the Alaska, which has a permanent people's fund, which forces polluters to pay for the nature that they are destroying. Is that part of the solution, is to insist that governments take back control of nature and put a price on it and charge realistic money to polluters so that we can repair the damage that they are creating?
Well, first of all, thank you, Brian, very, very much for your comment. And just to be clear, I retired from the council a number of years ago, so I'm not responsible for, for what they take up, but I'm hoping that they're going to be supportive of this campaign as well. And I know they're doing some really good work on AI with a number of environmental groups like Environmental Defense and Eco Justice and so on. So yes, yes, yes to your question. You are absolutely 100% right. This is what I meant about regulation. This is what Martin Luther King meant when he said, legislation may not change the heart, but it will restrain the heartless. We have to have rules. And I think a lot of us is that we're a funny moment in our history, aren't we? I mean, here we have Mark Carney, pure business guy, like, let's be honest, like, you know, from what he's done with his work, but then going on to Brookfield Management, an asset manager, no less. But he's faced with a terrible situation. He's faced with this dreadful man in the White House they're still trying to destabilize Canada. I don't think they've given up the 51st state desire one bit. They're giving Alberta concessions that they're not giving the rest of the country on tariffs because they're trying to foment that right-wing separatist noise in Alberta. So at one level, I deeply feel for Carney, and we all want for Canada to disengage from the United States and the deep, you know, and some of us feel, and I'm sure you do, Brian and Joe, those of us who were around then feel like taking out a great big full page ad in the Globe and Mail and saying, we told you so. Put all the eggs in an American basket, and someday somebody like this comes along, and we are, you know, we've made an omelet of our economy, and it's very hard to extricate. So I think a lot of people are just taking a deep breath and saying, well, see where this goes. But the worry is, of course, where the environment is going to, the climate change has fallen off the government agenda, all of the government agendas, but it has not, this is interesting, and it's something Joe said earlier, it has not fallen off the interest of people. There are many, many, many polls and interviews and reports. One very recent, there was an international one that shows the vast majority of people around the world want their governments to do something real. to protect water, to protect forests, to protect the climate. They want this. And when they're told, well, the market answer is the only answer because you can't stop these companies and you have to give them more money and you got to let them pollute and then they can pollute and trade. We have to name what that is. And it goes back to democracy. It's just what you said. Yes, we need those regulations. And at the moment, it looks like people are stepping back and saying, okay, we'll give you some time for this. But I'm waiting for a resurgent movement in Canada, not destructive of the current government because it's fragile, but I fear social programs and foreign aid and a bunch of things are just going to fall off the face of the earth while we search for rare earth minerals. And anyway, thank you for your comment. I deeply agree.
Yeah. A kind of a related comment in the chat comes from Pat Carter up in North Bay, I think, suggesting that, the Ring of Fire, we have a government in Ontario that really doesn't want to put in regulations to defend nature in that regard. We're kind of at a loss. So I'm sure you're not arguing for poor regulation, but good regulation. But it just, I suppose, points out, doesn't it, Maude, more work that we have to do?
Yes, it does. And thank you very much, Pat, for that comment, because those of us living in Ontario are very disturbed about what Ford is doing in terms of dismantling environmental rules. Well, he's opening up the privatization of water services in 6 or 8 municipalities. He's going to have an arm's length corporation run these services, although they're being beautifully run by the public sector right now. He's already changed the rules where if you had a license for water taking as a bottled water company or a quarry or a big ag business, if you sold your business, the new owner had to reapply for a water license because that water belongs to all of us in the earth. It doesn't belong to these companies to trade and sell. They've changed that rule. There's just 2 of the rules they've changed. A third, of course, is that they're setting up these economic free trade zones, which they're also doing in New Brunswick and other places, where there will be an area of development that will be free of the environmental and labor laws of the province or the country. I mean, Joe and I have been to the maquiladoras in northern Mexico. We know exactly what that looks like when all the rules are gone and all the pollution gets dumped openly into the open rivers and lakes, and the workers are treated like they're nothing, and they are nothing. They're just to the companies, they're just slaves. And so we mustn't allow that to happen in this country. And I know, as I said earlier, we're at a point where it's delicate because we don't have the former international or geopolitical situation, and it's all an influx. But we can't destroy our environment. We can't allow this northern development in northern Ontario. Northern Quebec is the same. They're just allowing permits without regulation. We have to go back to protecting the earth. How can you not, when you look at the stats, when you look at the species extinction and so on, we owe it to our kids. Somebody said, I owe it to my kids and my grandkids to show them animals. Maybe they're going extinct, but this is what we have and had, and we have to keep.
Wow. Maude, I'm going to, you quoted George Monbiot a couple of times there, and the quote that you use at the beginning of the book is where he says, climate breakdown is the result of a global failure to address the power of private capital. And you go on to quote this Oxfam study that says 2/3 of global heating is caused by the richest 10% in the world. One of the great things about all of your work, but this book, is that you tie in the issue of inequality with the attack on nature.
Thank you so much for raising that, Joe, because I really don't want to be seen as just concerned with nature. Not that that's important enough, but people live in nature. And when in the project to save nature, you kick all the community off, the landless peasants who don't have property rights because it was owned by their parents and their parents and their parents and their parents. That's where they lived. But they don't actually have a piece of paper that says they own it. They're gone. And this is in the name of conservation with environmental groups backing it sometimes. This is so profoundly wrong. So yes, we need to put, I talk about the twin rights, human rights and the rights of nature. And you can't take one without the other. You have to build them together. And I quote a wonderful man named David Boyd. He's a Canadian. He's lives in British Columbia. He is an environmental and legal expert. He was the one who promoted, in his role as a special rapporteur for the UN, promoted the right to a healthy environment and got the United Nations General Assembly to adopt it about a year ago. Very, very exciting. And he's writing a lot, very interestingly, about this dual notion of rights. And so you simply cannot have one without the other. And I think we need to pull those threads together, but also the organizations that work with human rights and people in poverty here and those working with the environment here, and pull those together, because it's one issue.
Yeah, and you do that. The book does that so well. Sue Wilson has a question.
Yeah, thanks. So today I was reading an article about Senator Rosa Galvez criticizing the federal government's decision to give themselves the power to ignore pesticide regulations when they see fit. And she was making some helpful connections between the importance of having strong regulations on pesticides and our economic concerns, saying that, European countries won't accept goods that have been sprayed with many pesticides. So my interest is this. Her argument only works because European countries have taken the lead on this. They've said, no to these pesticides and kind of integrated that into their economic decisions. So what do you think of kind of that growing movement of countries that are ready to move forward with regulations, banding together to create a block of countries to do so?
Yeah.
Whether that's banning fossil fuels or refusing to use pesticides. Do you see that as they're operating outside of the UN system, but do you see it as a way of actually giving momentum to wider UN efforts? Or do you see them as taking away that global momentum?
It's a wonderful question.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful question, Sue, and thank you so much. Absolutely. The power of countries coming together to set regulations among themselves so that they're not competing against each other by lowering them is absolutely incredibly important. Some of us hope that's what Carney meant when he spoke at Davos. And still maybe, we still have to push a lot there, but you're absolutely right. And this was happening when Biden was in power. There was a movement to get a common tax base for corporations, for transnational corporations with a number of countries, so that they wouldn't say, okay, you can hide here and we'll go wink, wink, and we won't tax you here. There was that was a very healthy and exciting thing that was happening that died with when the Biden administration was defeated, or when the Democrats were defeated. But it's absolutely one of the ways of the future. So that when you are having a trade agreement, and I'm not naive, I know there are going to be trade agreements that you have to set the bar high. And yes, isn't it too bad that Canada is now having to be scolded for breaking rules that are higher and better in other countries? We've got our work cut out for us, I guess.
Yeah.
But thank you. What a great question. And I know, Joel, I know we're coming to the end, and I've got the quickest little quote that I'm going to give just before. So give me 2 minutes before we end.
Oh, okay. Well, just one last thing. I see a couple of people have liked in the chat. Danielle Julien from Montreal, I wonder if you could just explain the thing you're offering there. It sounds fascinating. The animals' lawsuit against humanity. And a couple of people have said they like the idea. Could you just explain that, Danny, a little more?
Very briefly, yes, it's from an ancient tale about 1,000 years old, that has been transcribed in English. And the Sisters of Earth Network had a conference a couple of years ago, and we did put a short play of that. It can be done as, I think it is, the text is a play, the Animals Lawsuit Against Humanity. And putting that up could eventually lead to interesting conversations, maybe.
Well, thank you
Well,
for.
I
I think
Danielle.
I put in the chat. I did put links in the chat, I believe.
Yes.
But you know, this is very much in keeping with the rights of nature. The rights of nature gives rivers, the rights of rivers, the rights of trees. It actually says you have legal personhood. If a corporation can have legal personhood, which the Supreme Court of the United States said, yes, it does. Why can't a living river have standing? And people say, well, the river can't speak for itself. No, you have guardians, you have people who represent it, just as a child doesn't represent themselves in court, but the child has rights. So that notion is extremely important to emphasize.
Great. So we've come to the end of the hour, Maude. We're not going to exhaust you, but we do want to thank you. I just wanted to say that from the point of view of many of the congregations and the Office of Religious Congregations for Integral Ecology, we found the book to be so exciting that we really wanted to invite you, and we really seriously wanted to thank you, because we actually discovered in our own kind of networks this past year, before our staff went to COP30 in Brazil, the Conference of the Parties to look at climate issues, there was, for the first time ever, a document that didn't come from, say, Pope Francis or something like that in the Vatican about the ecology, but a document that came from churches of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And they say, under a section that's called "Who is Destroying the Earth and Who is Offering False Solutions?" they talk about the greening of the system, and they talk about creating a legal apparatus that helps to price, that is, to put a price on all of nature, which is then transformed into an asset that could be traded according to market rules who have access to it. And they go on to say the green economy emerges not as a break with capitalism, but an incremental modernization of capitalism, expanding its capacity for self-regulation while perpetuating systemic contradictions. So
Brilliant.
We see this document, but then your book comes and it explains kind of in technicolor for all of us what we might start to think of as an agenda together to address some of these issues. So it's brilliant. The timing is wonderful. And we're just wanting to thank you very, very much for being with us today, Maude.
I want to thank you so much, and ORCIE and my dear friends. And let me just say the very last words of the book. Meanwhile, every time you do something positive, plant a tree, stand up to an aggressor, fight for better law, help someone more vulnerable, speak up against racism, protect a lake, help the young, you are the antidote to the greed, violence, and injustice in our world. We can walk this path together. Thank you so much. A lovely, lovely hour with you.
Thank you so much, Maude. And thanks to everyone for participating. As is mentioned, that we will be able to share this in case some people have missed it. And we look forward to all of us working together on so many of these issues that Maude has laid out for us. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maude and Joe.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was just lovely, guys. Thank you so much. We had a lot of people on there.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for clarifying. It's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.